Welcome to Breaking Through with me, Kristen Ralph Finkbeiner, powered by Moms Rising. The show we have for you today is powerful. We start out talking about what's happening with the care infrastructure, with childcare workers, with investments in our families that allow our country, our economy, and our businesses to work. So that's our first segment. After that, we dive into SNAP, which is food stamps, and how those have been rolled back so extremely that it's actually hurting state budgets overall. Following that segment, we look at biodiversity and at the chemicals that are being put into our food and how they are harming both our children's health and the health of the environment around us. And then we close the show talking about books. Yes, books, one of my favorite topics, and how they can actually help lift empathy for our entire country. We have one of my favorite people on the planet on. We have Julie Spectacular Kashen. She is a leader in childcare and early learning and all things about kids. Welcome, Julie.
Thank you. I'm going to come on here anytime I need an ego boost.
Well, you're welcome anytime. Love having you. Childcare, let's talk about it. Childcare has been a disaster. It has long been more expensive than state college in most states. Like, it is ridiculous. And it's ridiculous on so many levels. It's ridiculous because parents can't afford to pay any more for childcare. And then we also can't afford to pay childcare workers any less because childcare workers earn some of the lowest wages of any people in the entire nation. And already we have an issue with the low wages pushing childcare professionals completely out of the profession, which then hurts the quality of childcare overall. So we're between a rock and a hard place. Parents can't pay more. We have to actually pay childcare workers more. What is happening? And is the problem getting worse? Is it getting better? What's happening?
We just got results from a survey that the National Association for the Education for Young Children did, and they found that it is probably getting worse. Basically, they said 65% of childcare centers raised tuition last year just to stay afloat. And so basically what's happening is we already had that squeeze, that crunch that you talked about, and then it got worse because the price of living got more expensive. And so being able to pay for food or rent or other supplies to run a childcare program got more expensive. Liability insurance went up by a lot. And so now you have childcare providers who have to rely on parent fees because the government doesn't pay their fair share, and they are stuck having to raise tuition on families who also are facing rising costs and everything else. So parents are stuck, childcare providers are stuck, and it is a really tough situation.
It's super tough. It is so tough. And we have a crisis in three big ways with childcare. We have a crisis with affordability, which we've been talking about. We have a crisis with access. There are many places that are childcare deserts. And we have a crisis with also excellence, being able to have those highly trained childcare professionals consistently in the classrooms. What's it going to take to address this three-pronged crisis of childcare?
I love the way you put it. I often talk about it as the three legs of the childcare stool, and you kind of imagine a child sitting on top. So if one of those legs goes down, that kid goes down, right? And that's not what we want. We want all three legs completely stable for that child. Basically, what we need is models like what we're seeing in New Mexico and New York, where leaders are saying this is a priority. This is a priority for children. It's a priority for families. It's a priority for businesses. It's a priority for local economies, right? That we can invest money in this. Somebody is already paying for it. So if we invest the public dollars in it, then we all actually get the benefits of it. We are seeing these exciting progress, or this exciting progress in states and cities. But at the same time, other states are really struggling as the old big ugly bill took money away from states in terms of healthcare, in terms of food assistance benefits. Then those states are now struggling to fill those gaps. And that money might come from childcare programs. So on the one hand, you've got greater demand than we've had. You've got more and more leaders saying this is important. We have to prioritize this. but the resources aren't there when we need them.
It's a big problem. What can people do? I always have to ask this because this is a big problem. And now, people, this is a big problem for everyone. This is not just a big problem for people who currently have young children. This is a big problem for everyone. Parents need safe, enriching places for their kids to go so that they can go to work. Businesses need safe, enriching places for children to be so parents can work effectively. Kids need spectacular early learning so they can thrive, and childcare professionals need living wages so they can stay in the profession. It's like a bridge. Just like we need to build bridges and roads to drive on to go to work, we need to build childcare infrastructure so the workforce can actually work. And so how are we going to get out of this?
I will get there in a moment. I just want to double down on why it's so important also, right? The same survey from NACE showed nearly half of early educators reported an increased sense of burnout, uncertainty that, they have these low wages, they have already staffing shortages, and just the demands of the job that they're not getting paid for. So if you have a workforce that's increasing in their burnout, they have the opportunity to take jobs that maybe pay more, pouring coffee, selling appliances, we're going to have a bigger and bigger problem. At the same time, more than half of early educators said they don't trust institutions the way they used to because we're seeing this disinvestment, this further disinvestment in childcare. What does that mean? That means that there's distrust in democracy. There's distrust
Yep.
in the ability of, government to solve people's problems. So the stakes are really high because you and I both know the government has a really important role to play in solving America's problems, and it can when it's working well, but right now it's not. So what does that mean? That means that we need to demand that our elected officials do the right thing. We need to hold them accountable to our families, to our children. Right now, we have a war that is costing $1 billion a day. Imagine what it would be if those $1 billion a day were invested in our children, in our families. So we need to be calling on Congress, calling on this administration to do the right thing. We need to be talking to each other about how challenging this is. It's not my problem. It's not your problem. It's not a mom guilt thing, right? This is because we didn't build the systems that we all need to make it work. So we need to tell those stories. We need to see the stories in each other, and we need to hold our elected officials accountable.
And call them, tell them to make sure that they invest in childcare, because investing in childcare is investing not only in families, but in businesses and in our economy. And we have the stats to prove it. What's the ROI?
The ROI is about every dollar invested, I'd say about $15 goes into the economy. And that's based on so many different things, right? And we also know, our kids aren't widgets. So while the number matters and the fact, some people are really taken by that $15 on an investment, that's huge. But also just imagine, right, that baby smiling at their mom, right? Imagine that child reading a book to their friend in childcare for the first time. Those are things that you actually can't put a price on. So for those who need to know the price tag, it is a really good investment. There's a huge ROI, but also this goes beyond those numbers. It goes to our values, it goes to our love for the next generation, and it goes to America's future.
100%. I mean, we're talking about our future leaders, and we're just completely undercutting our future leaders.
Yeah.
Speaking of undercutting, what's happening with early educators right now? I mean, this is really a crisis. Many people are in this profession because of their love for being an educator, their love for children. My mom, when I was young, was a child care worker. She wanted to be near me and, also with other kids, teaching them. And I know it's such a hard right now place to be working. What's happening with early educators?
Yeah, I had the chance last week to sit down with an early educator in Alabama who shared with me that she had recently been in the emergency room for hypertension, that she is doing as much as she can with so little, and every day it's less. And then you have folks accusing childcare providers of fraud in the press based on nothing. And this is someone who's been doing this work for 30 years. She loves her job. The families she serves love her. And she just doesn't know if she can do it anymore. And she's not alone. A lot of early educators are thinking about getting out of the field, about closing their childcare providers or their centers or their programs because they just can't do it anymore. It's too much.
Yeah. And it's too little pay to feed their own families.
That's
That's
right.
the other part. Or to even have their own kids in childcare. I mean, it's just the math isn't mathing.
That's right. And when the going gets tough, these are the people who step up and say, it's okay. I'm going to take care of your kids and I'll go into personal debt. I'm going to stop paying myself a salary because I know you all need me to take care of your kids or because I love your kids. But we can't keep balancing our economy on the backs of early educators.
No, absolutely not okay. I'm going to switch gears just for a minute. It's depressing what's happening in childcare with the rollbacks to childcare, with the already devastated patchwork system getting even more devastation. What's giving you hope? You are such a spectacular advocate for childcare. There's got to be something fueling you. What's fueling you?
I just know we can do better. I look at our world and I think we know how to do this. We just need to clear the way to make it happen. And I had this opportunity last week to go visit with Black women in the South who are doing incredible work with too few resources. But seeing their innovation, their care, seeing what it looks like when leaders lead with love, with care for their community, with connecting with their community, it was really inspiring. And so that's keeping me hopeful.
I love that. Do you have advice for people who are going through all of this and looking at the headlines and going, I can't take it? I'm just
Stop.
going to check out and not pay attention to politics anymore?
I mean, I do think I stopped watching TV news in 2016 and it has made me a happier person. Skim the headlines so I know what's important. I ask friends what's important, but I don't spend a lot of time there. I I don't think people should put their head in the sand, but I do think they should get outside and enjoy the sunshine. I do think they should go, cuddle their dog, cuddle their kid. Spend time being as present as possible because that's why we're doing all of this. We fight because we want to have a good life and we want to enjoy the moments we have in this life. And so I think really practicing presence as much as possible is part of the answer.
I love that. I read some very scary political headlines earlier today and then found that I needed to go look at trees for a little while.
My other thing, Kristen, I think you'll like this one, dance. Like
Oh, yeah.
dance it out.
Yes. Definitely wiggle it out, dance it out, do whatever makes you joyful. I
Exactly.
love that. That's so true. And feel free to take a little look at a tree every once in a while if it's
Trees are good too.
I was like, oh no, the headlines are so bad that I am now looking at trees. This is
I
terrible.
mean, I even recommend going as far as hugging a tree, right? I
Oh,
I think that trees can transmit like good vibes.
I
So
would agree. I have hugged a tree or two in time, I will confess. I enjoy a good tree hug. Right now, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. It's quite rainy, so that would be, a very wet, damp tree hug. So I'm going to avoid that for today, but
I think that's
I'm going to
smart.
keep that under advisement for the future on a dry day because I think running out of my office and hugging a tree would be just like perfect,
Well, it's a
given
plan
the
for the
headlines
summer
that we're
then.
looking at. Like, okay, read headlines, run out of office, hug tree, run back in office, continue fighting for a better tomorrow.
Kristen, the
So
other thing
great.
I think about is, what can I do for a friend right now? What can I do for a colleague right now? And sometimes just picking up the phone and asking, how can I help you? What do you need right
Aw,
now? That kind of
yeah.
gets you out of your tragedy, that gets you out of your stress and into just being of service. And that can be a beautiful way to shift things as well.
Oh, we've got a good list. We've got dancing, we've got looking at trees, we've got hugging a tree, as long as it's not a rainy day. We've got calling a friend, and then also calling a friend to see if they need help. So many things you can do. We've also got Julie's really excellent suggestion of not always watching the news. That doesn't mean being checked out. That means that you could, I do it, scan the New York Times headlines. Boom. Like, do I know what's going on? Yes. If something terrible is going on, will I get 1,000 texts? Yes. So don't completely check out, but don't put yourself under the undertow of doom. Because that is actually a tactic, by the way,
That's
of the
right.
Trump administration. So much negativity coming out that you check out and don't engage. The important thing is persistence and protecting our democracy and our families and our economy. And that is going to take some fortitude. So I give everybody a hug, Julie a hug. Let's have this fortitude together. Let's make sure that we all go vote. Let's make sure that we elect candidates who support childcare, who support nutrition, who support healthcare, who support all the things that we need to thrive and to contribute to our communities. Thank you so much, Julie, for being on.
Thanks, Kristen.
We'll be right back with our next guest talking about SNAP and how nutrition is important for all of us. I didn't think we would have to talk about how nutrition is important, but apparently we do because Donald Trump has cut it. And one of my favorite guests is here. Hello, Gina Plata-Nino. She is with the Food Research and Action Center, also known as FRAC, also known as Superheroes, also known as So Important. Welcome, Gina.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited that you're here. So, food. Food is becoming increasingly unaffordable. We have an affordability crisis in food. Can you share a little bit about what's going on in terms of access to food, access to nutrition, who has access, who doesn't, all of the things? What's happening with food right now?
A lot of things. I think you said it best, right? Like we have a trifecta, for lack of a better word. So we had tariffs that really increased sort of imports and exports coming in, which raises prices. We have inflation that is also impacting food access. So now I believe the last labor data statistic, it was the food now costs 2.7% more than it did this time last year. I think a good indicator, while eggs did go down, beef is, $7 to $8 more, making it incredibly expensive. And now we expect that we'll be having a very different conversation as the war in Iran continues, because that's impacting fuel, right? Think transport, in other ways. And at the back end of all of that, we have low wage Americans, right? Who are working incredibly hard, but their wages have been reduced or not making enough. And so rely on the supplemental nutrition program, SNAP. That program was cut down dramatically in the summer, almost $187 billion. So what that means is that it means cuts for people in terms of less benefits, cuts for individuals who are no longer eligible under the new rules. So at a time where we have more food insecurity, less jobs available, a weak economy, we have less resources to be able to propel individuals.
And hello, when we go to the grocery store these days, it is jaw-dropping. I mean, absolutely jaw-dropping. I wish I could live on coffee alone. Sometimes I do confess to trying to, but coffee is up 33%, you all. Like, this is not a small amount of increase in food and sustenance prices. And SNAP is so important and has long, basically forever, had bipartisan support. Now, when Trump did his State of the Disunion recently, I was completely shocked to hear him brag about pushing people off of SNAP. That is unprecedentedly awful. SNAP has been shown time and time again to not just lift hardworking people, but to also lift our economy. And one Republican analysis found that for every $1 that taxpayers put into SNAP programs, we all get back $1.73 in economic activity, because when you have SNAP, you spend it pretty immediately at the grocery store, which then helps pay the grocery store workers. It helps pay the truckers that bring the food to the grocery store. It helps pay the farmer. It helps pay everybody along that whole supply chain. And when you take it out, it's people go without. And people need nutritious food to be able to work, to be able to raise kids, to be able to contribute to our communities. Again, cutting SNAP cuttings our ability to contribute to our communities, to work, and to boost our economy. It is the opposite of economic smartness. What is your take on the way we are seeing Republicans frame SNAP that is breaking the bipartisan history of support of this program because of the numbers that show that this is such an important program for our economy.
I think the way to look at it is it really is not unprecedented. I wish it was, but though we got to this point. But if you look at starting back to the Reagan era, right? Food banks came from there to respond to the hunger crisis that the Reagan administration caused, because the first thing they did was transfer millions of dollars to billionaires. Sound familiar? And cut down child nutrition programs, SNAP programs, unemployment. And the administration denied that there was hunger in America, and later on had to take away some of those cuts that they did, because they're like, oh no, we really caused a hunger crisis, right? We saw it again in 96 with Newt Gingrich really pushing the Contract for America. Republicans were like, Contract for America, pretty much dismantled the TANF program, which put, primarily single women, moms with less resources to be able to have. And now Republicans are like, we did so well. And this Contract for America, right? SNAP also got capture under that. We have our time limits. We have all of these awful provisions. And now we're back in 2025. Same thing. Republicans were like, we were successful in the 80s. We were successful in 96. Let's make the program even less unaffordable. And they just, I think it's the straw man's argument, right? They want to make sure that people who are lobbying, who are paying their bills, keep on getting richer. And it really is that. Like, it really is pitting Americans against American without letting us see that they created an economic, ladder. If you are and I keep saying billionaires, because it's not millionaires. If you're a billionaire, you will be fine in America. If you are a regular America, like most of us are, who are not making incredibly high seven figures, we are in trouble because it's impacting. It is the getting rid of the middle class, because everyone, even if you're not on SNAP, you are impacted because your state, your municipality now has to offset the federal disinvestment both in healthcare, in higher education, and in food security in order to continue providing for its members. And so when you see your school getting less resources, when you see that you're not getting that special ed teacher or that school bus, or your potholes are not getting paved, other sort of resources that their hospitals will be closing, and groceries are closing because they will also are impacted. That's the result of federal disinvestment, where it impacts full communities and not just the individuals who need help at the moment.
And at the same time, our federal taxes are not going down. So what does this mean? This means that the money has been shifted. We are not seeing less taxes coming from us because healthcare has been cut dramatically, because SNAP has been cut dramatically, because other core programs that allow families who are Democrat, Republican, Independent, and Libertarian, and any other political party to thrive have been cut. No, instead what we saw was a dramatic shift from highly popular, highly effective programs like Medicaid and Medicare and SNAP into programs like ICE, into programs where we saw those funds being used to terrify hardworking families, to separate families, to create chaos in communities, and to not have any accountability measures to communities as ICE officers are there and present. And so one of the things that we know is that we need a safe, orderly, compassionate, and secure immigration process. That we know. What we also know even more is that we don't need cuts for SNAP, we don't need cuts for healthcare, and we don't need cruelty. So these funds have been diverted out of our pocket to cruelty and out of SNAP and healthcare. I'm just going to say, I cannot even believe it. And now we have it being diverted even more into whatever Donald Trump is doing with his ridiculous international dispute causing. I don't even know what to call it. I'm going to call it international dispute causing, which is also highly expensive. So it's not like our tax bills have gone down. Also, we see, billionaires, as you said, having to pay less taxes on their yachts, not very many people can afford yachts in the first place, much less need a yacht tax break. So like
Actually,
that's
a
not
lot of
helpful.
and private planes, private
Yeah.
helicopters, those are not taxed. But our vehicles, who have gotten so incredibly high that we need to get to work, those are taxed, right?
Yes.
All the return on investment that they have is not taxed. So it's actually states are going to get a double whammy. Not only the federal disinvestment, but now the billionaires in their states are paying less taxes. And it's interesting because the main there's this idea of who's like the most deserving. It's people who are literally sitting at home, and as they sit at every moment, they're getting millions, thousands of dollars in the bank for doing absolutely nothing except making sure that they supported an administration that was going to prioritize them and make the 2017 Jobs Act, right, those tax breaks for billionaires, permanent. It is the most inequitable transfer of wealth in American history. We are not getting that back.
And it's our wealth.
Yes.
Taxes is our wealth. That's what I always try to, remind people. This funds have been prioritized by people like me, you, and us who know that we need access to healthcare. We're one of the only industrialized nations without universal healthcare. Who know we need access to childcare. Hello, most industrialized nations have a better childcare system than we do. Who know we need access to SNAP and nutrition. What kind of country rolls back SNAP? Not a good one, you all. And who knows that we don't want cruelty. We do not want to fund chaotic, unlawful cruelty happening around our communities. And that's a large part of what's being funded with these monies that are ours. It's so upsetting. It's not sort of a board game. Those are literally funds out of our paychecks. I'm so upset about this. What can people do?
What can people do? It's call it out, right? Like you mentioned what happened with border protection, right? We call it border protection, but they went after refugees, asylees, children, 5-year-old children, people who are making money as private, again, friends of the whole circle, billions of dollars. Instead of doing affordable housing, they're doing warehouses of people. And I do know, like within the Jewish community, it does bring back a lot of stress, right? Thinking of Germany creating these hubs where people were taking to be placed, right? These people, there is no organization, there is no oversight whatsoever. 170 billion towards that, right? And 187 billion taking off from SNAP. So what can we do? We really need to call it out, right? At the end of the day, we may not be millionaires, but each vote, each voice counts. Call up your member of Congress and let them know, this is what I'm seeing in my community. I am not okay with you, the way that you are representing me in Congress. I need you to prioritize our interests, not the interests of 2 to 3 billionaires in our state. The millions of people in my community need to ensure that SNAP is protected. People are getting cut off of these harmful time limits. We see older adults, grandparents, who now can't raise their children because they can't afford it and they have to go back into the workforce. I need you to do something about it. And I need to make sure that as we talk about the Farm Bill, as we talk about any legislation, that we go back to restoring SNAP how it was before July 4th.
100%. And how can they join your organization? Because hello, everybody needs to join. Get involved, stay involved, follow, track.
Yeah.
You're doing amazing work.
We make it super easy for you. Where you have to do is put in your information. So go to frac.org and put action, put in your email, and we send you updates so you know what's going on all across the country and in your state. And we tell you exactly how to contact your member of Congress, what those priorities are. All you have to put is your information. And we're always happy to talk to people. So definitely sign up and reach out to any of us. We're happy to offer any technical assistance you may need.
And for people who want to make a call to Congress, what should they say, like specifically? They should call the member of Congress, pick up, when they pick up, and you won't talk to your member of Congress, you're going to talk to the office. So when the office picks up, what should they say?
Yeah. And they're like super friendly. I've met from either party. Everyone's super friendly. They're super nice. So keep that in mind. My name is Gina. I am a resident put in your state. I am a resident of this state. He is my representative. I am concerned about these SNAP cuts that happen, and I want you to sign up for any vehicle that's going to restore SNAP so that my neighbors can have food. And that's it. It's as simple as that. I think that was like 30 seconds.
That's it. Please support any vehicle that restores the SNAP funding so my neighbors can have food. Boom. Very important message. Like, very important on many levels. Like, what is even happening in our country that we have to make these calls? But please make those calls, and please sign up with FRAC. Thank you so much for being on, Gina. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
Don't go away. Next up, biodiversity, chemicals, Donald Trump, Maha Moms, and you. We have a really great guest that we're bringing on right now. Brett Hartl, who is with the Center for Biological Diversity, talking about chemicals in our food. Welcome, Brett.
Thanks for having me.
I'm really glad you're on because there has been a lot of much needed attention around the chemical glyphosate, which is used in Roundup, which is a herbicide that gets put onto a lot of the things that we eat, and also apparently used as a drying agent on foods and more. And it's ending up in breads, in cereals, in the food that we are feeding to our children. And what's interesting about this moment is this is a moment where Maha Moms and moms across the political spectrum all agree this stuff is ridiculous. Yet we have a president, President Trump, who ran with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on getting glyphosate out of our food on a promise of making sure that there was less chemicals, specifically that one, in the breads that our kids are eating. And he just did an executive order to expand protection of glyphosate. And so, of course, Maha Moms are mad, and moms like me across the political spectrum are mad. Can you share a little bit about what is happening with glyphosate?
Sure, and yeah, it's glyphosate. It's a tough
glyphosate.
One.
Thank you.
So yeah, just a few weeks ago, President Trump issued an executive order under something called the Defense Production Act, which is a Cold War era law that gives a president sort of extra powers to promote particular industries. The idea of this law back in the day was, if we were fighting the Soviet Union and we needed to make more tanks, we'd have the ability to make sure that we had sufficient supplies of materials to fight that war. President Trump likes the Defense Production Act. It's still on the books. Other presidents have used it as well. But this recent executive order was somewhat unique in that it specifically called out for greater production of two things. Elemental phosphorus, which is something you mine out of the ground. But elemental phosphorus is like one of the key ingredients in order to make glyphosate, as well as a few other types of high precision munitions and weapons for war. But you don't need to have the weapons for war piece to also have this massive directive that says we need more glyphosate. Glyphosate is the most used pesticide in the nation and probably the world. We use hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds per year. It does go on to crops that are grown for food. It is also used as a desiccant, so a preservative in food. It is also extremely commonly used and sold just at every hardware store or Home Depot in the country. It's the most common one you'll find being applied residentially. So in your yard, at your school ground, playground, park. It's used in many, many non-agricultural uses as well. So it's a very, very, very broadly used herbicide. So there's no shortage of it. But this order compels the Department of Agriculture and other branches of the government to ensure that we have a safe supply of glyphosate. And I think the thing that was most alarming about this to most folks that looked at that order was that it also contained a specific call out for immunity. It says if you follow this order, and as everyone follows my executive order, I am granting immunity. Should down the road any aspect of this executive order prove unlawful. Something Trump actually has never done in any other executive order he has ever issued, and he has issued in this term alone over 200, and probably between the two terms 300 to 400. So that was very unusual, and I don't think any other president has ever done that either. So that's one thing that I think worries a lot of us. Why do we need an executive order to have more glyphosate, and why do we need this weird immunity shield to be specifically called out in that order.
Excellent questions. I have some guesses on answers as follow-up questions. One, study after study, actual scientific study, not like people's opinions over in the corner who may or may not have had a brainworm, but actual scientific studies show that this chemical, which I'm not going to try to pronounce, glyphosate,
Correct.
actually is a neurotoxin and is high carcinogen and does damage to actual people. And can you talk a little bit about the damage that the actual scientific research studies are showing that this chemical is doing to people of all ages, including young children?
Yeah, so there's sort of two pieces of this. Glyphosate itself is called an active ingredient, which means this is the part of the chemical that does the dirty work of killing the plants, right? And for many, many years, there has been dispute about whether or not it's a carcinogen. For many years, EPA relied on a couple of studies that sort of were the foundation of their conclusion that it was not carcinogenic. One of those studies was retracted because it actually turned out later it was funded by industry. And it's extremely rare for a paper to be retracted, but the journal that published it realized that they had not caught that conflict of interest. There's several international bodies that assess chemical safety and cancer risk, and they classified it as a possible or likely carcinogen, right? So there are many scientists that have worried about the carcinogenity of glyphosate for a long time. It's also important to remember that every time you have a pesticide that's sold, it's just one part of the cocktail that is sort of when you mix it together, when you actually read the label, you'll see all these like percentages of what's in there. And the reality is that glyphosate is also often mixed with a lot of other ingredients. And a lot of those are really dangerous and have had links to things like breast cancer and other types of illness. And the reality is, again, if you imagine a chemical that is being used on the scale of 300 to 400 million pounds per year in the country, just the sheer exposure, the volume that is out there, it just permeates and saturates everything. So even if it were not the most toxic pesticide, we use it at this absurdly enormous scale that no other pesticide is used at, and that I think compounds a lot of the harm that we see all across the country. There are thousands of lawsuits suing. First it was Monsanto. Monsanto was bought by Bayer for people getting sick, getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And many juries around the country have basically said, you're right. The pesticide company failed to warn you of the danger of this chemical because the label says spray it as much as you want. There's basically no limits to how often you can use Roundup and other similar products in a schoolyard, in your backyard. So that's the core of the problem with this. And again, why it is, such a problematic pesticide.
And also answers the question partially of why does the executive order include immunity? And the answer probably is because this chemical is actually harmful and people are getting actually harmed in real life and are suing the maker of the chemical and winning. And so therefore the immunity comes out in the executive order because we see Trump siding with industry over moms, industry over children, industry over biological diversity, which we haven't talked about yet. But we know that one of the top causes of the loss of species on the planet Earth is when we have things like invasive species, or we have things like chemicals that take out a whole bunch of biodiversity. So what's happening with biodiversity related to this chemical?
Yeah, so glyphosate and Roundup are herbicides, and they're effective ones. In the United States, the trend in a lot of, I would say, conventional agriculture has been towards, GMO crops that have specifically been engineered to have resistance to pesticides. So you can spray a pesticide over a large amount of land, and The crops themselves are tolerant of that chemical, but everything else isn't. So it's a tactic to, knock down weeds. But the reality is that a lot of the plants that are not genetically engineered to be tolerant of glyphosate, there are over 1,000 endangered plant species in the United States. Plants actually there are more listed plants than there are animals. So we see, a lot of impact to, native plants throughout the West, the Midwest, in the Farm Belt. One of the most iconic and really troubling realities is that glyphosate is so effective on killing milkweeds, and milkweeds are the only source for food for the monarch butterfly when they're in their caterpillar stage and laying eggs and turning into butterflies. So we've had this massive decline of monarch butterflies across the country, in part driven by glyphosate, as well as other pesticides, neonicotinoids, other types of insecticides. And none of them are great. But again, it's the scale of some of these ones, especially things like glyphosate, where it's hundreds of millions of pounds, that causes massive damage. So we see harm to plants, insects that depend on plants, but birds, mammals, everything, the whole food chain is interconnected, and those impacts, unfortunately, keep getting worse. We have lots of lawsuits trying to challenge this, but we're fighting obviously large corporations with a lot of power, so it continues to be something that we're struggling with.
So this chemical hurts human health, it hurts planetary health, it hurts our biodiversity, which ultimately does hurt all of us because we, need biodiversity to survive and thrive. What can people do who are outraged that Donald Trump just did a complete reversal for no real reason? As you said, there's not a shortage of this, and has made our country significantly less safe and healthy for people. What can people do?
Sure. Yeah. There's obviously a lot of different ways folks can take action. One is to try to avoid buying Roundup and using those types of products, and making good choices about what you just do in your own communities. There are lots of folks working on trying to get pesticides just out of our neighborhoods and our towns, and you should support organizations that do that. We see these fights about the power of the pesticide industry. They're playing out right now in the Farm Bill, which is being considered by Congress. Republicans in Congress have written some pretty gnarly provisions into their version of that bill. So, you can raise your voice saying we don't want a farm bill that unjustly rewards the pesticide industry, and we want ones that focused on people, on farmers, and our health. And yeah, I think, just making better choices and trying to help educate everyone about the dangers of these pesticides is something that everybody can do. These are long, difficult fights, but any help is always welcome. And we're all trying to get to the same place, right? Which is just a healthier environment and frankly, healthier lives for ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. And can they also join your organization? If so, how?
Sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you can go to basically biologicaldiversity.org. We're a member-supported organization. We always love to have more supporters that share our values about the dangers of these pesticides and getting them out of our environment, and making our all of us healthier. So sure, we would always love more support, but there's lots of other folks doing great work too.
Yeah. I mean, it takes everybody doing everything. And
Yeah.
importantly, everybody doesn't have to do everything each individually alone. Like if I'm doing one thing on one day and somebody else is doing another thing on another day, and, so on and so forth, it all adds up. So
Yeah.
I hope everybody does get involved with the Center for Biological Diversity and stays involved and keeps an eye on this, because this is really, really, really important. So thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for all you do. Thanks for helping to save our communities and also our planet. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate it, the opportunity to chat.
Thank you. Okay, next up, books, empathy, and joy. We are joined by a very, 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 very important guest, Jill Miller, who's a librarian at the Cardinal Elementary School. And hello, can we say thank you for being a librarian? Thank you for building a love of books. Thank you for educating our future leaders. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Jill.
Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited. So there's a lot of things to talk about. Some of them are current news, and I'm just going to start with current news. Current news is that Republican leaders are about to push yet another book ban at the federal level, and it's ridiculous. And I wondered if you can bust some myths. Are book bans needed because just any book from anywhere at any time can just appear in a library? Or is there a process to get books into libraries at schools?
Yeah, so I'm a military wife. So I've been in lots of different states, lots of different school districts. In every school district I've gone through, we have a policy that we have to follow. We can't just order anything we want. In Arlington, we have to make sure that the books that we buy have peer reviews. So it's not like we're just willy-nilly putting books in our shopping cart and don't look at them.
Yeah, and there's parent engagement, there's community engagement,
Yeah.
there's teacher engagement. There is engagement. And one of the things that really makes me annoyed about this is the far right is kind of trying to frame this as parent choice. Well, no, they're taking away parent choice. If you start banning books at the federal level, you're taking away what local parents, local teachers, local community leaders actually want and importantly need for the education of the children in that area. And that takes away choice. So I am so annoyed. Are you annoyed about book bans? What do you think about them?
I am very annoyed. And I always tell people that you need to have those discussions with your children. You cannot tell 730 children in a school that they can't read something.
Yeah.
And that discussion needs to be at home, and you cannot do that for every kid.
Yeah.
So I am also very annoyed with that. Right?
And there's
we went
already
to school.
standards in place.
Yeah,
like there
like, we
are
went to
standards in
school.
place. Yeah.
And we're trying to build a diverse library that fits the curriculum needs of grade levels K through 5th in the elementary, or a middle school, or a secondary school at the high school level. You know, so it's important work we do.
It's so important. Also, reading books is so important. It's so important for critical thinking, really important for empathy. And this is one of the things that I think a lot of people don't realize. There was even one study that found that reading a Harry Potter book increased your empathy almost exponentially just from reading a Harry Potter book. Like, you don't have to read a book about empathy. You just have to read a story. And then you increase the child's empathy, the adult's empathy, the community's empathy. And right now, as I'm looking at the headlines, it would appear that a little bit more empathy could be helpful to maintaining the balance of the planet. And, so that means reading is so important on so many levels that people don't even realize. And the first week of March is Read Across America Week, and March is Literacy Month. What is the most, or some of the most important things that children get from reading? Like, why is literacy important? I can't believe we have to ask this, but let's talk about it.
Yeah. So for me, I grew up in Northeast Iowa. Everyone looked like me. Everyone looked like me. So if we didn't have access to some of these cool stories about the world, not even the world, even places in the United States that we've never been or seen, or people we've met, they're never going to get exposed to those things. And I think then you're living in your bubble.
Yep.
And so libraries help with that. I mean, they help with just the research skills, the critical thinking skills. They're helping with understanding the difference between fake news and what you're seeing in a random website. So we do lots of things in the library that increase all of those kinds of literacy skills.
And I just think that's so important. All of the literacy skills, all of the social, emotional development skills. You said something I think that is so important for us to think about right now. Each of us are walking around in our own bubble. And it's so important to have empathy, to be able to have empathy, to be able to walk in somebody else's shoes, right?
Yes,
There's no better way to walk in somebody else's shoes than to read a story. It can be a nonfiction story. It could be a fiction story. It could be any kind of story. It could be like a board book, but just having that ability to perspective take is so important.
Understanding different perspectives is a big one, especially if you haven't been outside your small little bubble. I was a librarian in Montgomery, Alabama, and the kids would constantly touch my hair because they hadn't been around a lot of white people before. It was, eye-opening.
So walking in other people's shoes is so
Yeah.
important. And also learning about communities across the country, across the planet is so important. One of the things that I want to ask about is if you could share about the spectacular read-in. I love the idea of a read-in that you did with NEA's Read Across America in your library. What happened? Were there a lot of kids there? What books did you read? Was there dancing? What was going on?
I think all of the above. So we had Miss Becky Pringle, she's the president of NEA, and Princess Moss is the vice president, and then Mr. Candelera is the treasurer. He was here to do read alouds to the kids. And it was a first grade class and a kindergarten class. And we chose it to be a little smaller, so afterwards they could do cool, fun activities.
Ooh.
But all first graders and all kindergartners in the entire building got books.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, and then each teacher in the building got a bag of books that matched the grade level that they taught.
Oh.
So super cool. So we read Miss Taco. It's about a girl that was constantly making mistakes. And through the book, she learns that it's okay to make mistakes by making tortillas.
I love this.
And then we read I Am Definitely Human. It's about aliens that come to the planet and they try to tell everyone that they're actually really human. So it's a story about kindness and being helpful in the end.
I love that. I love that. Books are so fun, and books that are funny are also fun. And one of the things that we know is that humor helps bridge barriers. And so funny books have that added extra power of barrier bridging. When you are talking to parents, and now, we potentially have a lot of parents listening right now, what is your advice about reading to kids? What kind of books should they read to kids? What's fun to do? What's your advice?
I think building a routine, a consistent routine. And then I also love it when kids go to the library, whether it's a public library or a school library, and they're selecting their own books. They take ownership of that. And I think that helps build the routine. And then I also think it's important that kids see their parents read, like a chapter book, so that they're not just on their phone looking at something, they're actually reading a book. And I think that also builds, if they're doing it, maybe I should do it as well. Yeah,
that's a good point. And your point also about screens. Now, feeling a book, that tangible moment when you can turn the page, it makes that crinkle noise. It's full surround sound engagement. When you're reading on a screen, there's no crinkle noise. You're not feeling it. And obviously you can see the words, but sometimes they're actually much smaller and you don't get the colors as much from the pictures. I love a good picture book. Can you tell? And so actually reading the book and turning the page with your kid is important. One of my favorite things is Goodnight Moon, where you can find the mouse in each page. I love a little book like that too, where it can be interactive both with the words and the images. What do you think about those kinds?
I love that. You need to read Goodnight iPad.
Really?
Yeah. So that's where the tech has to go away because the grandma can't handle all the noise and that.
I love that. Yeah, books can be a nice sort of place of solace from all the noise too. That's a good point that you just made.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips for educators about reading with students, especially when you're competing with the very, very, very noisy iPads?
Yeah, I think we can't take the joy out of reading, right? Everything is you must read this book for English, you must do this. So when students come to the library, I need them to have choice of what they're picking. And I often get teachers coming into the library and saying, no graphic novels. I don't want them to check out graphic novels, but I'm like, graphic novels is like a gateway drug for books.
Yeah.
You get students Then they'll start reading more and more, and we'll eventually get them to a chapter book. But I think choice is so, so important
Yeah.
to
I
bring
mean,
up the joy of reading, and then they want to pick up the book.
yep. Yep. That's so true. And graphic novels are fantastic.
I
you
love
know.
them. Yeah.
They're so good right now. I mean, they're high quality literature. I think
My-
a long time ago for many parents that they weren't high quality literature that they are in the last like 10 years or so. It's
My
really
daughter's dyslexic, and so she's in 6th grade now, and she wants to read some of the books that her friends are reading, but now they have the graphic novel version.
Ooh.
So she's feeling like she's, can fit in, and she's,
Mhm.
reading them at a rate of, it's crazy. I love it.
I love it too. So let's talk favorite books. As you can tell, I love all books. I just have like a whole lifelong love affair with books. What are your favorite books? And it can
Okay.
be for kids or for adults or for youth or anything.
So I have a favorite, always have favorites of the moment. I don't know, because I look back, I don't know if I could just pick one thing that
Yes.
I have favorites of. So I have 2 that I absolutely just finished and love. This is The Incredibly Human Henson Blaze by Derek
Ooh.
Barnes. It's excellent. It was a Coretta Scott King honor book.
Uh-huh.
And this one is The Trouble with Heroes by Kate Messner. Both are
Wow.
great for the like 6th, 7th, 5th, 6th, 7th range. But both have great messages that the main characters are overcoming, and it kind of fits with what's happening in the world as well.
That's fantastic. I wrote them down also as you were talking, because one of the things I've noticed recently is that books that are often aimed at kind of those early middle readers are so spectacularly written because they have to hold the attention of a small person who wants to wiggle all over the place, and they don't use the crutch of like extreme violence or other things that sometimes adult authors use to hold your attention. So those authors have to really pull out all of the acrobatics of attention gathering to keep those kids' attention focused. And so then I'm like, hey, this is actually really good writing.
Yeah, I enjoyed both of them.
Yeah, I'm going to read them too. We only have about 50 seconds left. What's your advice to people in this culture where we are just inundated by short tweets, short Instagram videos, short everything about books? Do we still need them?
Oh, heavens. Yes, we need books. Go to your library. Please go to your libraries. Public libraries are great because not only can you get books, it's like a one-stop shop. You can go to the maker spaces. I got my passport at the library. Please read, and not the little tweets. I've stopped most social media and try to read like newspapers and online. I will read online magazines because I don't want all the print purchasing, but yeah, that's kind of.
Reading is cool, you all.
It is.
It'll
It
help
is
build
cool.
empathy, build knowledge, build real change. So thank you so much for being on. Really enjoyable talking with you. Wrote down those books, definitely. Love your tips. Thank you, Jill Miller.
Yeah, have a great day.
Thank you. Well, that's it for our show today. Thanks so much for tuning in to the top topics facing our nation in the way that requires the most boring disclaimer in the history of the planet Earth. Here goes. Views expressed on this show are those of the individual speakers and should not be attributed to Moms Rising, to this station, or to any news or social media service that may disseminate a recording of this show to the public or to any segment of the public. Boom! We'll catch you next week.